song about gathering of the churches. Thank you, Ashley. Where they all gather in heaven, especially as one. Not just the Church of God, just a Baptist church or a Catholic church, all the churches gathering together as Christ gathers them on that day where we will rejoice in that fellowship of the church in heaven. This morning, I want to talk about a new year, a better year. When I was first preparing for this morning, the message, I actually had a title of A New Year, a Better You, or a Better Me, because the thought process is this. I had actually did a Better You for a Hello Again Wednesday episode. Because of the new year, there's things that we can do that will make this next year even better than the last. Now, excuse me, sometimes that's kind of hard to comprehend that it would be better than the last, or maybe you can think of a year where, man, this year was way better than this year. It was the idea of, if you think about it, COVID. COVID was the year where no one loved it, no one liked it, except for those that broke the rules maybe. But that was a terrible year. The year of 2008, when the housing crash happened, people lost so much money in their financial holdings, never to be brought back. And so there was better years that in the past. There can be a better year in the year ahead. Now, I'm not talking about, okay, this is how we're going to make our finances grow, or how we're going to make our future grow. What I'm talking about is the things that we personally do, because once we leave these four walls, we're going to want to see something better outside there. It really does start with us. There's the saying of the golden rule. Now, I don't know if the kids know about the golden rule so much, or if they've heard it, or phrased a certain way. Sometimes people mess up that phrase about the golden rule, and they make it up, and I've seen this especially in movies, that he who has the gold makes all the rules. He who has all the money makes all the rules. And they think that is the golden rule. They'll hold on to that because they have all the money. And they would rather be the one making all the rules. They hold on to that. That is not considered the golden rule. The golden rule would be much greater than that. It would be do unto others as you would have them do to you. And that is probably one of the hardest things to follow, to do to somebody else what you would want done to you, to me. Think about it. We could take some easy examples, because there's an opportunity where there's always people that are annoying us, correct? And so it would be really easy to slap one of them. And then maybe you want to do, ready, after you slap them, then you want to get all religious. I think in the scriptures it says you need to turn the other cheek now. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way at all. It is, you're to be doing to others what you would want done to you. You don't want to get slapped, don't slap someone. If you want a smile, smile at someone. If you want a hello, say hello to someone. You're to do to them. See, some of these are simple thought processes. Once we slow down and think about certain things, this should then become, the more you do it, it becomes natural. For some people, it's not natural to say hello to a stranger. I would never talk to a stranger. You know, and sometimes we make up these things along the way, like, you know what, we're trying to teach kids, don't talk to strangers, don't talk to strangers. Well, eventually you have to talk to a stranger, even a kid. How do I say that? Because when you go to school, you might not know the kid that's sitting next to you this year. They are a stranger. So you would do unto them as you would have done unto you. A smile, a hello, what's your favorite game? Understand what I'm saying? For now, adults, it would be other things. You would talk with other people in such a way of, so one of the big things is, so what do you do? Okay, well, what do you do? We could be, you know what? We could even be the thought process, I'm retired. That's what I do. I am retired. I don't have to go to work. I don't have to punch a clock. But then when you think about what do you do? Well, what do you do when you're retired? Do you just sit on the couch? What do you do when you're retired? What do you do at work? What do you do on your off time? Well, for me, it's not so much of what do you do. I ask people, what's your hobbies? What is it that you really, really like? Because then you find out who that person really is. And when you find out who they are, you're going to have these things that are going to pop up of, well, I don't have a lot in common with that, or I don't even know anything about that. It would be hard for us to have conversation, but I can still be nice and listen to what you're saying. Do unto others. Jesus is teaching that phrase, and it should be the thought process where Jesus, I'm talking to you guys like, hey, talking to strangers, or how you're treating your family, or how you're treating your friends, especially those two categories. Friends and family, I know those people, so I know how I'm going to treat them. You have to be very careful because there's going to be conversations where people that you come in contact with will tell you stories. They're not even connected with their family anymore. They don't talk to their family anymore. They got mad at their family, or they got mad at their friends, or they don't talk to their friends, or they, in Facebook, got unfriended or whatever. Jesus goes way deeper than that conversation right there. Because Jesus is not only saying, do unto your family as you would have them do to you, do unto your friends as you would have them do to you. Jesus goes way deep with it and says, do unto your enemies what you would want them to do to you. In fact, he goes and makes it even greater than that. Because in order to do unto others as you would have them do to you, you have to learn who that person is. You have to come in contact with them in such a way. And then Jesus is actually saying, you need to love them. You need to love your enemies. If you're going to treat your enemies the way that you would want to be treated, there is the huge word right there for us, love. Love your enemies. Some of you are still thinking, I would rather slap them. Unless I'm wrong. I mean, or maybe I shouldn't use, I'll go softer than enemies. Those who annoy you on a daily basis, where you wish they would never even come up to you ever, those people you're supposed to love. That's what Jesus is teaching. Those people you're supposed to love. When they start to curse you, when they start to berate you, when they start to put you down, they're not doing to you, see, you're doing to them what you would have done to you. They're doing whatever they want. And as they are doing that, you're supposed to love them. Love them and give generously without expecting anything in return. See, what Jesus is teaching is you're not to love your enemies as yourself, hoping to just get a pat on the back, look at that great person, look what they are doing. They're doing all this stuff so good. That's not what Jesus is teaching. Jesus is teaching it in such a way that you should expect nothing in return, which is really weird, isn't it? Do unto others as you would have them do to you sounds like I should be getting something in return. And the way people act, that's exactly how they place their love. I'm going to love you, but I expect you to love me back. And that is not the teaching Jesus is teaching. He's just saying love them. You love them. You love them, and then don't worry about the rest. Jesus is also teaching it to people that in such a way that all of a sudden you're looking at the character, the surroundings, the circumstances of the individual that's in front of you. In other words, you're looking at the human factor. You know what? You can have an enemy and realize that they are They do have human characteristics. They do have maybe the best of days, maybe the worst of days. I would say one of the best illustrations of loving your enemy was I'm going to say it was in the First World War, 1914, where they were fighting in Belgium, and it was the British fighting the what would have been the Nazis. And so as they're fighting the Germans, so here's the British, they're fighting the Germans. They are in Belgium having this war, and on Christmas Eve, it is said that they came together and called a Christmas truce. Meaning, it's Christmas Eve, we're not going to fire a shot, we are not going to fight you, we're not going to do anything to. In fact, what we're going to do is we're going to gather and share a meal or share this for that one day. And that would be maybe not so much loving your enemy as it was seeing your enemy as another human being. You know what? And they go back. Here's where you understand that it's the way people act versus the way God wants them to act. Because if they had a truce for one night where they could sit together and enjoy each other's company for one night, why could they not have ended the war and done it day after day? See, that's the difference of loving your enemy the way Jesus is teaching and loving your enemy only for a night. What Jesus is teaching when we look at what he's saying, we're looking at where he's talking about being merciful to people, be generous to them. So I read one area where the writer writes, the Bible does not, when it says to love one another or to love another or to love them as you would have done, or to do unto them as you have done unto you, is not, nowhere in the scriptures does it say just be nice. You understand what I'm saying? It doesn't say just be nice. That Christmas Eve, they were just being nice. Because the next day they went back to war. There was no love. There was no godly love in that conversation. One of the things, and I'm going to tell you, because where I'm at with this thought process is where Jesus teaches in both Matthew and Luke, they're both those writers wrote about this, the Sermon on the Mount, or when Jesus has healed a whole bunch of people, and now he's going to start telling the disciples or the close-knit followers, this is what love is. This is what you're supposed to do with your enemies. In this conversation of those scriptures, of that teaching, what we have is where Jesus, to understand where he's coming from, would be going through his whole ministry. Because one of the things Jesus was always doing was talking to individuals, was figuring out what things needed to be done to help them. Even from his first miracle, even though it was Mary who told him the situation, he was probably well aware of the situation because he had the first miracle that was to be done, where he turned the water into wine. He was actually loving on those people. Now, don't get me wrong. Go get your bottle of wine. He was loving on the custom of the day where this was about to be a huge tragedy for this brand new couple starting off. And so Jesus comes in and fixes things. Jesus comes in and loves them a certain way that just makes things even better for them. But he does it with generosity and mercy. He would then also talk to people in such a way where he would actually be in their face. And in their face, he's teaching them or he's conversing with them in such a way to look at themselves to find out where this love really is, of love your enemies or do unto others as you would have them do unto you. One of the big ones would have been when he talked to the woman at the well. Man, he had a huge conversation with her. And you talk about someone who had problems loving people. She was on her 5th husband by that time. And so there's this difficulty of loving that she had, and yet she knew all the rules and regulations of how to worship God, because that was in this conversation that she had with him. And Jesus, what he does, he's just trying to bring out of people what it means to love in such a godly way. And what did she do in her situation? She ran back to the village that ostracized her. That's why she was at the well by herself, because of her lifestyle and what she was doing. The people of Samaria, in the village that she was in, they ostracized her. They didn't want to hang out with her. Yet she does unto others as she would have them do unto her, by going back and saying, you should hear this guy who knows everything. And the people's hearts change because of how she learned in a brief moment what it means to love one another. In Romans chapter 12, verse 18, you have the writer of Paul, and Paul understood what love was. Paul was ready. Paul was named Saul, and when he was named Saul as a religious leader, not the king, but as a religious leader, his idea of doing unto others was he actually wanted to murder all the Christians, all the followers of Jesus. Jesus had already gone up to heaven, and he's with God right then. And so Saul's like, you know what? I know what the laws are. I know all of the religious texts. I know that these people are not godly. So I'm going to go and kill them. Well, the leaders told Saul, no, here's a letter. All you can do is go to their houses, capture them, and bring them to prison. That's all you can do. Well, on the road, Saul learned what it meant to love the ones he wanted to kill, such as Ananias. Ananias? I believe that's what it, yeah, yes. And so on the road to Damascus, Saul met the Lord, and his heart immediately changed. And so for days, he's with Ananias, and Ananias is talking to him. You have where this guy wanted to kill Ananias because Ananias was a follower of Christ. Now he's in his house eating. He's blind. He's in his house eating with Ananias, as Ananias is explaining and explaining over and over. He's treating Saul, who is, I'm going to call him Paul now, he's treating Paul in such a way that he's loving on him with mercy as well as generosity. And 3 days, I believe it is later, the scales fall off of Paul's eyes. Then Ananias had to go to, I'm going to call it church, a house church, and he had to tell those that were hiding, because they knew Saul was coming to catch them and take them to prison. He had to tell those people, this Saul who was going to imprison you, he's one of us now. And so there's so much to explain about, but I want you to understand, hearts change, and the thought process of how you love someone changes with it when you're following God. These people, remember I'm telling you at the very beginning that it's about following, doing unto others that are not your family members, that are not your friends, they're even outside that little realm. Because, ready? The Jewish people, they knew how to love family. In fact, they looked out for family. They had to look out for family, because when you go way back in time, when they were in Egypt, what were they? Slaves. They had to look out for one another. They left Egypt. They're now in the wilderness for 40 years. They had to look out for one another. After that, and time again after that, the Jewish people always had to look out for one another. And you will notice that that has not changed, that family mentality. What Jesus is teaching, though, is it's outside of the family. That love is not just looking out for family. So the Jewish people had to realize how this rule or this understanding of a new love was going to really radically change their hearts. Because then they would have to then love a Gentile. They would have to, ready? I told you about the woman at the well. The Jews did not connect with the Samaritans. They did not like each other. Yet Jesus is conversing with this Samaritan woman. And so the Jews had to now break that mentality of now we have to love everyone that are our enemies. The golden rule. I never knew this. Do you know the golden rule actually, that phrase, because it's not in Scripture. It's not, this is the golden rule. What did Jesus say, love your neighbor as yourself? That was the greatest of commandments. Remember? There's only two great commandments, Jesus said. Love your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and all your strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. Those two rules will make all the laws come together if you follow those two things. In the 1600s, they went all the way back to 1604, is when they actually heard for the first time, and it came from a religious leader, where it was called the Golden Rule. It was in the 1600s. So the do unto others as you would have done unto you was then first coined out as the Golden Rule. One of the reasons this person, I think it was Charles Gibbon, he's the first one that said it. And so here's what I tell the grandkids. Do you realize math is in everything? In everything. There is all kinds of math. Well, there's something called, it's called the, they called it mathematics for some reason as the example. So, I know what it was. To call it the golden rule places that rule at the highest level. So in math, there is always the greatest thing is always the highest level, the highest that you can get. The best that you can be is always found in math. And because of that, this religious leader said, this is the golden rule. This is number one. This is number uno. Do unto others. In the books of Matthew and Mark, when we have, I'm not going to walk away from the golden rule, where we have the greatest, love your neighbor as yourself. In those teachings of Jesus, when we have that right there, you will find the golden rule. You will find love your neighbor as yourself, ready? In many other religious organizations. And I'm not talking about churches. I'm talking about, you'll have it in Buddhism. You'll have it in the Muslim teaching, Islam. You'll have all these teachings in different kinds of religions. Love your neighbor as yourself. But they pinch it down. They don't take it to the level that Jesus is talking about, which means those that are following Christ are going to be on what is right with it. Jesus begins to teach the people that are surrounding him, that are closest to him, this very important, love your neighbor as yourself. What it did is it made the people begin to shift their ideas of what does it really mean to love. How can we live that out? How do we take what Jesus says, love your neighbor as yourself? How do we do that? Jesus had one other story that really emphasized the deepness of loving your neighbor as yourself. You remember the story of the man who was walking on the road and he was beaten by some thieves. They beat him almost to death and left him in the road to die. And then you have all these religious people that are passing by. And they won't even walk on the same side of the road. Why is that? Because if they walk on anywhere near the body, what if he's dead? If they touch or get near him while he's dead, then they're considered unclean. That's a rule we can't have. We can't be unclean, so we're going to just look away and walk on the other side so that we can go to church. And as they kept passing and passing, then there was this Samaritan who, and as he tells it with the story to these Jewish listeners, the ones that are listening, he's telling it in such a way. Do you realize that someone that we consider unclean, the Samaritans, the ones that we consider to be our enemies and we have nothing to do with them, those people, that one person came and not only took care of the man, brought him to a place to stay, brought him all kinds of medicines, and took care of all of his injuries. Then he paid the innkeeper, and he said, hey, if the guy stays extra days or if there's any kind of finances that add up more than what I'm giving you right now, as I pass back by, I will pay everything of it. Do you understand the love that Jesus was teaching in that story? It goes way beyond what some of us would ever think of doing. You know, sometimes we kind of have it, you know, what was it, pay it backwards or something like that? I know it's called pay it forward, but usually it's what you do is you're in line at a drive-through and you give extra money for the car that's behind you so that they can have a blessing. And so people have the thought process of giving some money, but you know what? It was deeper than that when Jesus said, whatever the cost is, I will pay it. It would require having mercy for our enemies. It would require giving generously with no regards to any kind of return to our friends, our family, and those we don't even know, but we see the situation. So as Jesus tells the stories, and as the disciples and as the followers of Christ are having their hearts changed, just in the stories that I've been telling, it is also where we can have our heart changed for a better year. See, in order to have a better year, there's two things you can walk away with today, okay? You could hope that someone's going to treat you really good because they're walking around with the same thought process as you. Do unto others as you would have them do to me or you. So that means if that person over there and you've annoyed them for a while and they come and treat you really good, that makes for a better year for you because you feel good, even though you were the one annoying that person. No, how about the other way where they annoy you and you treat them good? Either way of how that situation plays out, it plays out for a better year. It's a lot. It's a long way. 365, unless it's a leap year, then it's 366. And so it's a long way. Can you imagine see, it's one thing to say, hey, it's January 5th. Let's have a better year. And what happens on January 12th? A whole week will have passed. And some of us might walk in next week going, man, this week just reeked. There was nothing better about this week. Are you understanding what I'm saying? It's not like there's this golden rule, golden promise. What it is Jesus is just teaching in such a way, just do your part. Whatever you can, do your part to do unto others as you would have them do to you. For the next week, for something for us to do, for the next week, we need to start looking at people as human beings that might be hurting, or human beings that might just be frustrated, or human beings that just might be down on their luck, or human beings that might be having the best of time. We look at people differently this year, and it will be a better year, because that's half the battle of doing unto others as you would have them do to you, is how am I going to look at that person from this day forward? So for 365 days, I don't believe really in New Year's resolutions, because it's more like one of those, there's another saying, rules are meant to be broken. Resolutions, in my opinion, are meant to be broken. I don't know if you have that true heart's desire, or I should speak of myself. I have never had a true heart's desire to go, I make a resolution that this is going to be this, and then a week later, I will probably have quit. And so I'm like, you know what? It's not so much a New Year's resolution as it is a godly challenge, which is way different. Because every day that passes for me and I'm trying to do my best, God's looking at that, and he is very happy with that. There's going to be days in the 365 days of this year Well, I probably will not be the best person. Well, I probably will be maybe more that annoying person. Or maybe I'll be a jerk to someone. You understand what I'm saying? Because that's some of the things I always have to work on. And so for that challenge, I look for a better year ahead, let's just say for me. Not a better year for me, but a better year that I'm giving to someone else. Because you know what? That does change your heart, and you do have a better year with that. In Matthew chapter 6, verse 3, it has an area of Scripture that talks about how you're supposed to do good things to others. And it's in such a way that it is sometimes done in secret. Why is that? So that you don't get the applause for it. You're doing it because it needs to be done. And with that, God does the rewarding, okay? And so with that, you can be a secret, what was it, Christmas? Secret Santa. They came up with a new one this year so that people would not be offended. What was Secret Snowman? A secret snowman, okay? And so we're so messed up in our minds sometimes. I can't offend no one, so we're going to make it a secret snowman. We live in L.A. Where's the snowman at? You can come to our house. Connie has a whole bunch inside. But Christ is teaching us not to be a secret snowman, but just to be good. Just to do something for someone else. And you don't need the credit for doing it. So what are some of the things we need to do? We need to aim a little higher. For a better year, we need to aim a little higher. See, now I'm talking about just us in such a way where in order to have a better year, and I'm talking about giving unto someone else, that means I'm always looking around for what needs to be done. That also means that this year might require a bit more. It has to be costly, okay? And I'm not talking about finances. Don't get me wrong. It could. It could cost you some finances. You might need to give someone a meal, and it's going to cost some money. We were talking just this morning because we had, Connie's been gone seeing her mom and dad and some other family members, and probably the hardest thing that's been at our house is deciding what to eat for everyone. And so Ashley went out to go. We were going to have something real simple today. We were just going to have some roast beef, homemade roast beef sandwiches. You throw the roast beef in the crock pot. You go to church. You come home. It's done. All you got to do is put on some bread and eat it and enjoy it. Those are kind of cool meals where it's all just doing all the work for you. Well, the roast beef, I guess she was saying, cost like $30. And it's like, oh, how could a piece of meat cost $30? Man. So it might be costly this year to give to someone. Just in, you know what? Think it through this way for just a moment. I'm about to close. Ready? How many remember when McDonald's was, especially let's do a Happy Meal. How many remember when McDonald's was 99 cents for a Happy Meal? I know you don't. You're too young. It was 99 cents early on. You know what? We used to have this. It had like an A-frame that was red. It had this big old, before McDonald's or right around the time McDonald's was growing, we had Jerry's Hamburgers. And Jerry's Hamburgers in Rockford, he had a big old cheeseburger head, little tiny body. He's standing there, hey, come eat my cheeseburgers, like that. And it had the one that was by us. There was two, eventually two in the towns, right? I say towns because where we grew up. I lived on the west side of Rockford. Connie lived way east up on, at that time it was, I think it was Love's Park. And so she's way over there. They got a Jerry's Hamburger. It was brick, like a brick building, tinted windows, had the bench seat, not the counter, but man, I can't think of I'm thinking Happy Days. You go in and you sit down on the bench. This side, there's the table and the bench on the other side. And they had all that, and it was all plush and nice. Our Jerry's Hamburgers was the big sign outside, a bunch of windows, and a counter with those stools that spin. You know what I'm talking about? had that slippery stuff on the top, that vinyl that one of two things. If you spun around as a kid enough, you slid off, or if you were hot enough, because it was always hot and humid in the summertime, you stuck to it. That's what those little stools I'm talking about. Jerry's Hamburgers, 25 cents or 35 cents. In fact, they even had it on the sign. It was unchangeable, 35 cents for a hamburger. And I'm like, now you got McDonald's that wants to charge for a Big Mac meal. I don't want to exaggerate. It's close to $18. Am I right? Okay, because now, you know what? It's the new year, so they're roping back some of the prices now. Okay? Before there was when you went to McDonald's and you bought one meal, I guarantee that you bought a large fry, $4 for a large fry. $4. Times have changed where financially it would be a crunch to give generously. But it's not always about giving with money. What it is it's about what kind of efforts are we making? What kind of efforts are we making to see people a different way and help them out? There was a man who, his name was Gerald Kirsch. He wrote a short story, and I had to read it over and over to say it correctly. His short story was, Busto is a ghost too mean to give us a fright. Busto is a ghost too mean to give us a fright. Meaning this ghost was so mean, but it couldn't frighten no people. So he wrote this short little story, and this writer that I read, he says it this way. When you're looking at people differently this year, think of this little phrase in this little storybook. It says this. He describes a narrator who hates his landlord, then discovers the landlord's humanity when tending to a sick dog. The narrator observes there are men whom one hates until a certain moment when one sees through a chink in their armor the writhing of something nailed down and in torment. I read that because what this thought process is, when you see somebody within this year, you have no idea what's really going on inside of them until you slow down and look. And inside a little crevice, you might get to know a person in such a way that you actually see maybe pain they're going through, loss they're going through, heartache, or maybe something else. And you know what? You always see in the movies, the grumpy old guy, right? There's always a grumpy old guy in the neighborhood. Get off my lawn! Leave this alone! Stop throwing eggs at my house! You know, you have this grumpy old man like that. And there's always something in those stories in the movies where all of a sudden, usually it's a little kid comes up and changes the heart, melts the heart of the old grumpy man. An old grumpy man. Why is that? Because that little child saw something inside that person that meant something. We are all in the same boat in a little bit. We all have been sinners and forgiven. We all have our problems and still get forgiven. There's other people out there that deserve the same thing. They need for us to share that same story. So what will you do today? What will you do tomorrow? What will you do next week? See, it's kind of like Jesus with the woman at the well. It's just questions to make us think about what happens in this new year. Will it be a better year, or do we want to just be in the same old messed up rut or have our own difficulties, or do we want the year to be better? And when I say us, I mean me or you. On a personal level, what would make your year better? What will you do to sacrifice to make that happen? I do know this, that whatever the day or whatever you think you can do can only be done right and well with God. I know it can be a better new year. I'm going to play a video. We can sing along with it. Before I introduce it, it is before we sing it. It is the song. So you get in your head, because it's a new year. Ready? Old Lang Syne. Should all acquaintance be forgot? Da-na-na-na-na-na. Or ready? Think of the end of It's a Wonderful Life. Isn't that where it played? On A Wonderful Life. Think of that song. Think of that melody as we sing this song as we close this morning.
Should nothing of our efforts stand, no legacy survive, unless the Lord does raise the house in vain, its builders strive. Tomorrow's gain, tell me, what is your life amidst the vanishing dawn? All glory be to Christ. All glory be to Christ the King. All glory be to Christ. His rule and reign will ever sing. All glory be to Christ. His will be done, His kingdom come on earth as is above, who is Himself our daily bread. Praise Him, the Lord of love. Let living water satisfy the thirsty without price. We'll take a cup of kindness, yet all glory be to Christ. All glory be to Christ our King. All glory be to Christ. His rule and reign will ever sing. All glory be to Christ.
ask that there's anointing on your people, especially in this new year that we have coming up. These days and steps ahead, God, guide them. God, we ask for our eyes and our ears to be open in such a way that we see those that surround us in a whole new light. And may the light of you shine in us in such a way that we can do unto others as we would have them do unto us, without any regards of cost or of what comes back, because we give all the glory to you. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you for coming this morning, and we will see you next Sunday at 10:45.